Let me tell you something about silence. Ladies, sometimes the loudest moment in your life is the moment you stop talking. You ever notice how the minute you stop explaining yourself, the minute you stop begging somebody to treat you right, the moment you pull your energy back, suddenly he starts thinking, he starts remembering, he starts replaying moments, he starts feeling that gap you left behind. See, you didn't disappear, you shifted. You didn't shut down, you upgraded. You didn't lose him, you found you. And that silence you stepped into. Oh, that wasn't emptiness, that was power, that was healing. That was you saying, I don't chase peace, I become peace. Women don't talk forever. A real woman tries, she shows up, she fights for love. Until the day she wakes up and realizes she deserves a love that doesn't make her lose herself. And that moment right there. That's the moment a man realizes what he had. That's the moment he feels the weight of every word he ignored. That's when your absence becomes his loudest lesson. This isn't about playing games. This is about understanding your worth so deeply that silence becomes your strategy and peace becomes your proof. So if you're sitting in your quiet era right now, if you stop chasing, stop texting first, stop trying to remind someone how valuable you are, baby. You're not being forgotten. You're being felt. And the real story hasn't even started yet, because the most powerful chapter in a woman's life is the one where she rises without announcing it. And they all notice when she's already gone. Let's talk about that woman. Let's talk about you. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's echoes of everything you gave. Let me slow this down and say it plain. Your silence is not emptiness. It is not disappearance. Your silence is the echo of every piece of love, support, energy, and loyalty you poured into somebody who didn't know how to handle it. Every text you sent first, every time you showed up, every time you softened your voice just so they could feel strong. Those moments don't vanish when you go silent. They echo. They echo in his mind, in his memory, in the quiet moments when he has nobody to distract himself with. That silence becomes a powerful reminder of who you were and what he lost access to. Don't ever confuse silence with absence. Silence is presence on a higher level. Silence is your spirit saying, I'm done teaching you how to treat me. Now you get to feel the void my presence used to fill. You see, when you were explaining your pain, he didn't hear you. When you were trying to talk things out like a mature woman, he brushed it off. When you were expressing your needs, your fears, your heart, he thought you were doing too much. He thought you were needy. He mistook emotional honesty for pressure. But the minute you stop talking, now he feels everything you used to speak out loud. You ever notice that? He couldn't understand you when you were talking. But suddenly he understands you perfectly when you say nothing. You didn't change. His fear of losing you finally caught up. Silence is when his ego sits down and reality stands up. And reality hits different when the woman who gave her all no longer gives anything. There's a reason a woman's silence is louder than her tears. Tears show vulnerability, but silence shows growth. Silence says, I've cried, I've tried, I've expressed, I've explained. Now, I'm done. A woman doesn't go quiet because she's weak. She goes quiet because she has finally learned she can't be heard in the place she was begging to be valued. Silence is self-respect, learning to speak louder than emotion. Silence is dignity stepping in where pride used to live. Silence is your heart choosing peace over pain. And that right there, that's strength, that's maturity, that's real evolution. You ever see a man get nervous when you stop texting? When you stop asking where things stand? When you stop bringing up the future? He starts panicking inside, even if he plays it cool on the outside. Why? Because your silence means he can't predict you anymore. It means you took your power back. It means he no longer controls the emotional temperature of the relationship. When you stop talking, he loses access to your thoughts. And let me tell you something about men. Losing physical access bothers them, but losing emotional access, that shakes their soul. You became rare again the moment you stopped pouring. You became valuable again the moment you stopped probing. You became unforgettable the moment you stopped explaining. Your silence doesn't say, I don't care. Your silence says, I'll care for myself now. And when a woman starts caring for herself, her energy shifts in a way that hits a man harder than any argument ever could. You think arguments make him think. No, arguments feed his ego. Silence touches his conscience. Silence forces reflection. Silence makes him replay every moment you tried to make it work. Silence makes him realize you weren't dramatic. You were dedicated. You weren't needy. You were loyal. You weren't too much. You were giving more than he ever deserved. Silence reveals the truth he refused to see while you were speaking it. Let me paint it for you. Imagine a house that suddenly loses heat. You never appreciated the warmth until it was gone. That's what your silence is. Love paused. Access denied. He walks into emotional winter and wonders why it feels so cold. And that cold, that's not punishment. That's reality without you. Silence is not payback. Silence is healing. Silence is protecting your spirit from someone who mishandled your heart. Silence is saying, I hope you get your life together, but I am no longer the one holding it together for you. A man will always remember the woman who communicated, who cared, who tried. But he will never forget the moment she went silent, not because she gave up, but because she finally gave back to herself. And every time his phone stays quiet, every time he scrolls and doesn't see your name, every night he lies down without your voice soothing his ego, he feels that silence. It follows him. It humbles him. And in those quiet moments, he finally understands you didn't leave empty. You left him with the echo of everything he didn't appreciate. You didn't disappear. You elevated, and silence was your first step up. When a woman pulls back, she becomes a mystery again. There's something powerful, almost magnetic, that happens when a woman pulls back. When she stops showing up with all that energy, that love, that attention. When she goes quiet. See, men fall in love with mystery, with curiosity, with the unknown. And somewhere along the line, you stopped being a question mark and became the whole answer sheet. You were always available, always ready to talk, always responding fast, always giving updates, reassurance, clarity. You made it easy for him. And baby, let me tell you something real. What's easy is rarely valued. What's always present is rarely appreciated. But the moment you pull back, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, you become a mystery again. You become unpredictable. You become the storm he didn't see coming and the calm he suddenly misses. A man's curiosity is one of the most dangerous triggers in the world. It flips switches in him. It wakes him up. Because at first he thought he had you figured out. He thought he knew your reactions, your routine, your heart. He thought she ain't going nowhere. He got too comfortable, too confident. And then one day you stopped chasing. You stopped asking questions. You stopped over-explaining your worth. You stopped trying to prove you were the one. And suddenly, your silence wasn't just silence. It was confusion. It was intrigue. It was power. Because nothing messes with a man's confidence like a woman he thought he owned suddenly moving like he never existed. When a woman pulls back, she forces a man to confront a reality he never prepared for. He doesn't know everything about her. He doesn't know what she's thinking. He doesn't know if she's done, if she's healing, if she's moving on, or if she's simply tired of carrying emotional responsibility for both people in the relationship. And that uncertainty eats at him. Don't let anybody tell you mystery is manipulation. Nah, baby, mystery is self-value. Mystery is space. Mystery is emotional independence. Mystery is when you choose curiosity over desperate clarity. You stop broadcasting your moves because you finally realized that not everybody should be invited into your inner world. Your silence becomes his loudest alarm. Your calm becomes his discomfort. He starts wondering what you're thinking, who you're talking to, what changed, where your attention is going now. A man doesn't panic when you're talking. He panics when you stop. When you stop checking his social media. When you stop texting good morning first. When you stop being emotionally predictable. When you stop offering updates about your feelings, your day, your heart, that's when he realizes your attention wasn't ordinary. It was a privilege, and privileges, when not honored, get revoked. He goes from, she'll always be there, to, why isn't she here? From, she loves me too much to leave, to, who did she give that love to now? From, she'll respond in a minute, to refreshing his phone like a man possessed. Women think men don't notice. They do. They notice the shift the moment your focus turns inward. They notice when their access isn't guaranteed. They notice when they are no longer the center of your emotional universe. See, modern men crave attention, admiration, emotional feeding. Not all men, but the ones who take love for granted. And when that pipeline dries up, when that emotional ATM machine stops spitting out validation, he starts feeling the withdrawal symptoms of losing a woman who once fed his soul. Even if he didn't say thank you, even if he didn't acknowledge the effort, he felt it. And now he feels the absence of it. Pulling back doesn't make you cold. It makes you self-aware. It makes you powerful. It reminds him, and more importantly, reminds you that you were never meant to pour endlessly without being poured into. You weren't built to chase. You were born to be chosen. The moment you step back, you step into your femininity, your grace, your dignity, your value. The moment you stop forcing connection, the right people start noticing your worth all on their own. And that mystery, that unpredictability, it's not a game. It's not punishment. It's simply you returning to yourself. You are not withdrawing love. You are withdrawing access. You are not creating distance. You are reclaiming boundaries. You are not disappearing. You are repositioning. Trust me, a man may ignore effort, but he will always feel absence. When you pull back, you don't lose value. You remind the world of it. You don't lose him. You find him, baby, there is nothing more mysterious, more powerful, more irresistible than a woman who stopped trying to be understood and started choosing to be respected instead. Healing is louder than any argument you didn't have. Comes a moment in every woman's journey when she realizes something powerful. Arguing doesn't prove your worth. Healing does. There was a time you fought for clarity, begged to be understood, tried to explain your hurt, poured your soul into conversations, hoping he would finally hear you. You wrote paragraphs, cried through voice notes, sat on the phone trying to pull honesty out of silence. You wanted resolution, truth, fairness. You wanted him to care enough to fix it. But at some point, something shifted inside you. Not overnight, quietly, slowly, painfully. A tiredness wasn't just in your body, it settled in your spirit. You didn't want to fight anymore. Not because you didn't love, but because you finally understood love shouldn't require war. Healing begins the moment you choose peace over proving a point. You didn't lose your voice. You simply stopped wasting it. You didn't run out of words. You realized they were falling on ears that only listened when they felt threatened. Arguments train you to defend yourself. Healing trains you to protect yourself. There's a big difference. A woman in pain tries to be understood. A woman in healing releases the need to be understood. That's not weakness, that's confidence. Because a healed woman doesn't chase closure from the person who caused the wound. She builds closure inside herself. And that silence you carry now, that calm, that quiet space where you stopped reacting, stopped explaining, stopped probing. That silence is louder than any argument you ever wanted to win. That silence is you saying, I choose me. That silence says, I refuse to argue with disrespect. That silence says, you cannot gaslight somebody who knows her truth. That silence speaks for you in ways words never could. Silence isn't surrender. Silence is self-protection. Silence is self-respect. Silence is the language of a woman who realized she does not have to fight to deserve love. When you pull back from reacting, he feels it. Trust me, men feel the emotional disconnect before they ever admit it. When a woman stops arguing, a man's world gets real quiet. Not quiet like peace, but quiet like consequences. Suddenly, he has to hear his own behavior without your responses to distract him. Suddenly, he has to face himself without your explanations cushioning his ego. Men don't fear losing a woman who argues. They fear losing the woman who no longer reacts. Because anger still shows attachment to silence. That's evolution. There was a time you would have texted first. You would have apologized just to end the tension, even when you weren't wrong. You would have over-explained your feelings, hoping he'd finally value them. You would have begged to be heard, not because you were desperate, but because you loved deep and cared hard. But now, you've learned that love doesn't require your desperation to function. Now you go quiet. Now you take time for yourself. Now you breathe before you respond, if you respond at all. That's not coldness. That's maturity. That's emotional intelligence. That's what growth tastes like when it finally hits your tongue. Healing is choosing not to pick up the phone. Healing is choosing not to send that long message explaining why you're hurt. Healing is choosing not to scroll and torture yourself with assumptions. Healing is sitting with your own feelings and learning to soothe them, instead of handing that responsibility to somebody who mishandled your heart. Healing is crying in private instead of pleading in public. Healing is saying, I miss you, but I miss me more. And let's talk about this. The moment you stop arguing, he starts hearing a silence that forces reflection. He starts wondering why you don't fight anymore, why you don't demand answers, why you don't chase, why you aren't emotional like before. That silence becomes a mirror he doesn't want to look into. Because now, for the first time, he has to face the truth. You weren't dramatic. You weren't needy. You were neglected. You weren't uncontrollable. Your feelings were just never honored. Healing is powerful because it doesn't clap back. It steps back. It doesn't scream. It rises. It doesn't seek revenge. It rebuilds. Your silence became your shield. Your growth became your revenge. Your peace became your statement. And trust me, nothing haunts a man more than the peace of a woman he thought would break without him. Healing wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning of you. And the arguments you didn't have, they were never losses. They were proof you evolved past needing chaos to feel seen. You realized that peace is not earned through fighting. Peace is earned through choosing yourself. And baby, when you chose you, you spoke the loudest truth of your life without saying a single word. Your absence makes him confront himself. A man can ignore your tears. He can dismiss your words. He can tune out every conversation where you're trying to explain your pain, but your absence, oh, baby, your absence sits him down like life just handed him a mirror and said, look. Because when you finally step back, not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, he doesn't get to hide behind excuses anymore. He doesn't have your voice to drown out the truth. He doesn't have your presence to distract him from his patterns. He is left alone with himself. And let me tell you something most women don't realize until later. Your absence does more teaching than your presence ever did. When you were there, he didn't have to face the parts of himself he didn't like. He could blame your tone, your timing, your emotions. He could say you were too sensitive, too much, overthinking, dramatic. He could pretend the problem was you. But when you remove yourself, there's nobody left to blame, nobody to point at, nobody to argue with. It's just him and his reflection. And that reflection suddenly starts asking questions he never wanted to answer. Why did you lose her? Why didn't you listen when she was still speaking? Why did you let her walk away thinking she wasn't enough when deep down you knew she was more than enough? You see, your absence turns the volume up on his conscience. When you were there trying to fix, he didn't have to. But when you leave, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, the weight of accountability falls heavy. He has to sit in the quiet and feel every place where your presence used to comfort him, motivate him, stabilize him. He has to feel the coldness of life without your warmth. And that cold, that's reality hitting harder than any argument ever could. A woman's absence forces growth, not because she is punishing him, but because she's removing the emotional safety that he got comfortable landing on. When you stop being his emotional home, he realizes just how good he had it. And listen, men don't reflect deeply when they're comfortable. They reflect when they're alone. They reflect when they feel lost. They reflect when silence replaces your love. They reflect when the void starts speaking louder than your voice ever did. There's a truth many men hate to face. They don't mature through attention. They mature through separation. And that separation, that silence, that space you created, it forces him to meet himself, to meet the version of him that wasn't enough for you, to face the emotional immaturity he thought he could hide, to reckon with the fact that he pushed away someone rare, someone loyal, someone who actually cared. And make no mistake, he notices the absence of the woman who cared. He notices the peace you now carry without him. He notices you aren't checking his page, you aren't asking questions, you aren't running behind him emotionally dehydrated. And that hits him differently because now he realizes you were never clingy, you were consistent. You weren't too emotional, you were invested. You weren't nagging, you were trying to build something real. Men don't always realize the value of a woman when she's loving them. Sometimes they realize it when she stops, when her phone is silent, when the energy is gone, when someone else gets the smile he took for granted, when he sees you choosing yourself instead of choosing to fix him. That's when the truth lands. He didn't lose a woman. He lost his mirror, his balance, his emotional fuel, his peace. And don't get it twisted. Your absence doesn't guarantee he comes back. Your absence guarantees he feels what life is without you. Whether he grows from that or runs from that isn't your burden anymore. Because your absence isn't about making him change. It's about protecting the woman who already did. It's about stepping away from the emotional battlefield and choosing peace over chaos. He might text you again. He might call when the nights feel long and his ego feels fragile. He might say he misses you. Not always because he loves you, sometimes simply because your presence made him comfortable and your absence makes him accountable. But accountability isn't your job anymore. Healing is, rebuilding is, rising is. Your absence is not revenge, it's revelation. It reveals who he is without your softness. It reveals who you are when you finally stop shrinking for love. And baby, when a woman learns to stand tall alone, the world and every man who ever underestimated her has to rise up just to look her in the eye again. Choosing yourself will always shake a man who took you for granted. There's a specific kind of shock a man feels when the woman he underestimated suddenly chooses herself. Not halfway. Not let me see if you chase me. No, I'm talking about a woman who finally realizes her own worth, closes the emotional door, and walks toward a life where she is no longer begging for love. She was born deserving. Let me tell you something raw and unfiltered. When you stop choosing him and start choosing you, you don't just change your life. You shake his entire reality. See, when a man is used to you always being there, always forgiving, always waiting, always giving him another chance, he builds a false confidence. He convinces himself that no matter how he behaves, no matter how careless he is with your emotions, you'll still show up the next morning with loyalty in your hands and hope in your eyes. He mistakes your patience for permanence. He mistakes your softness for dependence. He mistakes your love for weakness. But the moment you wake up and say, I love me more than this, everything he thought he knew collapses. Because for the first time, you're not reacting, you're redirecting. You're not chasing, you're choosing. You're not hoping he becomes the man you deserve. You're becoming the woman you needed to be all along. And let me tell you, a woman choosing herself is not quiet energy, it's not soft energy. Oh no, it's an earthquake. It rearranges the emotional furniture in his life. It shakes his ego, it rattles his sense of control. It forces him to confront the truth that he never believed you would actually leave emotionally before leaving physically. But you did, And here's the wild part. He doesn't feel the loss when you walk out the door. He feels it when you stop walking toward him emotionally. The shift happens when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop trying to prove your value, when you stop shrinking just to fit inside his comfort zone, when you stop prioritizing his peace over your own. That's when it hits him. Men don't fear a woman leaving. They fear a woman who no longer needs to come back. When you choose yourself, your energy changes. You glow different. You move different. You breathe different. You start doing things for you. Things he never encouraged because your growth intimidated him. You start finding joy in places that don't include him. And that right there stings him deeper than any argument ever could. He expected anger. He expected begging. He expected tears. He expected to be the center of your emotional universe. But what he didn't expect was your peace, your silence, your standards, your upgrade. Choosing yourself means you stop negotiating with your worth. You stop discounting your love. You stop handing out chances like they're oxygen and he deserves to breathe only through you. No, baby. Choosing yourself means you finally understand you were the blessing. You were the safe place. You were the peace. And when a woman realizes she was the gift, the man who mishandled her starts feeling like the one who got used. Because he did. He used your patience, your heart, your loyalty as a cushion for his immaturity. And let me talk to your heart right here. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is sacred. It is survival. It is strength. You don't walk away to hurt him. You walk away to heal you. You walk away to protect the parts of you he treated as optional. You walk away to remember who you were before you tried to earn love from someone who didn't know how to receive it. And trust me, he notices. Even if he pretends he doesn't. Pride can hide acknowledgement, but silence will always reveal it. When a woman chooses herself, she scares the man who thought he owned her emotions. She intimidates the man who benefited from her doubt. She shocks the man who thought she needed him more than she needed her peace. Because now, he isn't dealing with the woman who tolerated inconsistency. He's dealing with the woman who outgrew it. And listen, there is no revenge louder, no closure stronger, no transformation more powerful than a woman who stopped asking, why wasn't I enough? And started saying, why did I settle for less? Choosing yourself doesn't hurt him. It exposes him. It exposes what he didn't give. It exposes what he took for granted. It exposes the parts of him he refused to grow. One day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day he will sit in his quiet moments and realize you weren't the one who lost anything. He was. He lost a woman who tried, who cared, who believed. And that loss, that's between him and his regret. Because once a woman chooses herself, she never goes back to being the woman who forgot she deserved that choice. When you rise, he remembers who you were, ladies. Listen to me real close right now. Because this part right here, this is where everything changes. This is where your power don't just whisper, it roars. There comes a moment after the silence, after the tears, after the pulling back, after the healing, when you start rising. And let me tell you something, when you rise, oh, he remembers. Because you were never weak. You were never desperate. You were never lost. You were just giving, loving, hoping, believing. And once you remove your energy, once you put that love back into yourself instead of him, that's when he sees who you truly were all along. See, a woman who rises isn't loud. She's not posting revenge quotes. She's not trying to prove anything. She don't need to prove she moved on. Her life starts proving it for her. She starts glowing different. She walks different. Her voice steadies. Her smile returns, not that forced smile, but the one that comes from deep inside her spirit. Her skin clears up. She sleeps better. She laughs more. Real laughter, not survival laughter. You can't fake that type of comeback energy. That's God-backed, self-powered, peace-protected energy. And when he sees it, when he feels it, it hits him in a way nothing else ever did. Because men don't react when you cry. They react when you rise. He didn't notice when you begged for understanding. He didn't pay attention when you tried to talk about your feelings. He brushed past you when you were trying to fix what he wouldn't address. But the minute you stood up and said, I choose me now, oh, now he got clarity. Now suddenly he remembers the woman who prayed for him, the woman who listened to him when nobody else cared, the woman who believed in him even when he doubted himself, the woman who held space for him emotionally, mentally, spiritually, while he couldn't even hold a conversation for you. And here's the part that always shocks them. You didn't rise to get him back. You rose because you finally remembered you. You rose because you finally realized you were too much woman to sit in a half-loved space. You rose because love shouldn't drain you. It should elevate you. Loving someone shouldn't require you to abandon yourself. You were never meant to shrink for love. You were never meant to beg for effort. And once a woman realizes that, a man who took her for granted sits with a pain he won't talk about, because losing a good woman is a quiet ache that lasts years. And seeing her rise, whew, that's a mirror he can't look away from. You know what hits a man harder than your silence? Your success. You know what shakes him more than your absence? Your peace. You know what haunts him more than your goodbye? Your growth. Because he remembers the woman who showed up for him. And then he sees the woman who started showing up for herself. That's a before and after he can't run from. And let me make this clear. Your rise ain't about revenge. It's about evolution. You didn't level up to get even. You leveled up because staying low would have betrayed your soul. So don't ever think you lost anything when you walked away. You didn't lose a man. You found yourself. You didn't lose love. You reclaimed your heart. You didn't lose time, you gained wisdom. The strongest glow a woman ever has is the glow that comes after she chooses herself. The glow that says, I survived what tried to break me. I outgrew what tried to limit me. I became the woman I needed. And trust me, when he sees that woman, he remembers every moment you were good to him, every time you showed up, every time you gave more than he deserved. He remembers your loyalty. He remembers your softness. But now he sees your strength. And that shift, that's unforgettable. A man never forgets a woman he could have built heaven with, but tried to give her hell instead. He never forgets the woman who walked away respectfully, quietly, gracefully, because the peace she walked into will always be louder than the love he failed to give. Rise, baby, keep rising. Because when you rise, the world takes notice, and so does he. But by the time he finally understands what he lost, you'll be too far in your destiny to ever look back in regret. You don't rise for him to miss you. You rise so you never miss yourself again. The rise of a woman who remembered herself, ladies. Before you walk out of here today, I need you to sit with this truth. You were never broken. You were transforming. You didn't lose your voice. You learned to speak in power instead of pain. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And your distance wasn't punishment. It was protection. You didn't step away because you stopped loving. You stepped away because you finally started loving yourself. And hear me real clear. A woman who chooses herself is unstoppable. She's dangerous in the most beautiful way. Not because she harms anybody, but because she refuses to harm her own soul again. When you rise, you ain't rising to prove something. You rising because staying small was suffocating you. You rising because God, life, purpose, whatever you believe in, started pulling you higher. And listen, you don't need him to notice. You don't need him to come back. You don't need answers from someone who couldn't give effort. Your peace is the closure. Your growth is the proof. Your future is the revenge. So walk out of here with your head high, your heart proud, and your spirit untouchable. Stop explaining your worth. Live it. Stop hoping he'll wake up. You woke up. Stop waiting for someone to choose you. You chose yourself, and that's the most powerful decision a woman will ever make. You are not done. You are not behind. You are just entering the chapter where the spotlight finally hits the woman who was building in the dark. And baby, when you rise, the world shifts. So go out there, reclaim your power, rewrite your story, and remember this: you don't chase, you don't beg, you don't break. You rise and everything else falls in place.